English translation 561st contact, Tuesday, the 14th of May, 2013, 002 hours.
Greetings, dear friend.
Greetings also, and I am glad that Florina reached you so quickly, and that you could come so quickly. Because what's up is this thing here with existing life in the universe. Because somehow I am not quite clear about this description here in relation to Venus, because I guess I messed up the description pretty badly. Actually, it should also have been obvious to you that something could be wrong.
When I noticed the mistake, the book was already printed and on sale. So the whole thing was irreversible. Consequently, by looking ahead, I was able to make sure that the book would not circulate very much, and that at the beginning of the third millennium, you would correct and work on it, so that the error would be corrected. And I also said nothing in 1993 because you did not have the financial means to stamp out the work, as you say, and reprint it if it had been revised at that time. So I kept silent for these reasons.
But I wrote the manuscript back in 1978. Did you not read it?
Unfortunately, no.
That's too bad, because now some things have to be put right. Did Florina tell you what it is about?
Of course she did, so we can deal with it immediately. My idea is that I correct everything, and that you immediately form the whole thing in your way of speaking and record it in the computer.
That is feasible, of course. Then you can start right away with your explanations. Just a moment. Yes, I am ready and you can begin.
Ta explains, and I formulate and record everything in the computer.
Formulate the following, what I have to say now, also that, and the corrections and additions that I will make here directly in the book text. So it will be good if I quote certain existing book texts, but first of all there is an explanation in brackets, namely the following.
The following corresponds to a clarification that was misunderstood in the first edition of the work. Existing life in the universe, as a result of a communication mishap, and was therefore also misinterpreted.
After that, here comes the first text, whereby this introductory section can remain.
Venus.
With regard to Venus, which has already been mentioned, I would like to say the following. Venus is surrounded by a cloud cover which cannot be penetrated optically, and under which twilight prevails. The atmosphere is made up of suffocating carbon dioxide and exerts a pressure that is unbearable for higher life forms, which is about 90 times greater than the Earth's air pressure. At around 500 degrees Celsius, it is so hot the metals with a low melting point are in permanent liquefaction, while below the cloud layer, the colors of the planet are dominated by yellow, red, and black.
Here we continue with what needs to be corrected, as I explain it to you, and that you should now formulate yourself according to your words.
Venus is an unfinished planet, one that could develop into a flourishing planet over millions of years, if all the necessary requirements are met. And it is to be said that Venus can become a flourishing planet, just as another planet has been in almost the same orbit around the Sun. About 1 billion years ago, there was a slightly smaller planet in the same place in the habitat zone as Venus today, but it was torn away by an elemental cosmic event. This planet was not Venus, of course, but a planet not much smaller than Earth. And it was this planet that was swept away by a much larger wandering star, the wandering sun, drifting through the system, but with another small planet already in its wake, but which freed itself from its wake and settled in the orbit around the sun in place of the small planet that had been swept away, which was already bearing its first vegetation. This cosmic catastrophe, however, changed the state of the torn-away planet to such an extent that many volcanoes erupted and devastated the surface, after which the wandering star and the torn-away and towed planet came into the direct range of Sol gravity and plunged into the sun. Another event that took place about 3,700 years ago was that Venus, which at that time was still a satellite in the ring system of the planet Uranus, was torn out of its home system by another large wandering planet passing through the Sol system, and was brought to its present location in its toe more than 3.5 millennia ago. This very large wandering planet, called the Destroyer, which was about 1.72 times larger than Earth, traversed the Sol system for a very long time and wandered out into the Kuiper Belt until it returned to the interior of the SOL system at an average rate of about 575.5 years. But this dangerous light-emitting wandering planet was finally taken out of the SOL system by the Plejaren towards the end of the 20th century. In answer to a question from me, the Plejaren once explained to me that this destroyer was not a unique phenomenon, because there are many such wandering planets in the vastness of the universe, often in gigantic sizes, drifting freely through space and not belonging to any solar system. Thus, in the orbit of the former vegetation-bearing sister planet of the Earth, which had mountains, valleys, fields, forests, lakes, oceans, blue skies, and light clouds, Venus was dragged there, but it was a volcanic planet. The first volcanoes that erupted from the surface of the ice planet dragged away by Uranus, today's Venus, created an atmosphere composed mainly of carbon dioxide and water vapor. The water vapor condensed into droplets and rained down on the surface of the planet, creating large lakes, rivers, and oceans. A large part of the carbon dioxide suspended in the atmosphere was dissolved by the still liquid water and prevented the air from becoming too thick. The carbon dioxide brought to the ground and to the waters by the rain sank to the bottom of the lakes, rivers, and seas, as it is also the case on the Earth, where the huge quantities of carbon dioxide produced by the human beings are deposited at the bottom of the waters and in the ground, creating great dangers, to form compounds with various substances from which the carbonate rocks and other carbonate rocks then developed. According to the Plejaren, about 1 billion years ago or a little more, the planet that used to be on the site of today's Venus and was then torn away by a wandering star is said to have had a vegetative appearance similar to that of the Earth at that time. A slightly blue sky and clouds of water vapor were also part of the planet's appearance, as were rushing rivers and lakes and seas that burst their banks. Green ferns and mosses were present in their original form, and so the first living unicellular organisms also existed from which higher life could have developed. But this was not to be the case, because the action of a wandering star from the depths of space destroyed all harmony and turned the flourishing planet, which had once been on the site of today's Venus, into a volcanic hell. Its mother star, the Sun, was also affected when the wandering star tore the planet out of its habitable zone and plunged into the Sun together with it. Furthermore, when the Venus of today was torn out of the Uranus system by a wandering planet, this planet itself was also affected by falling over and lying on its side, which will be discussed later. The near collision of the wandering planet with Venus destroyed the entire planetary harmony. Huge earthquakes unleashed enormous forces that tore the surface of Venus apart and caused volcanoes to erupt. Everywhere, masses of lava spewed out of cracks in the earth. Huge volcanoes spewed fire, lava, sulfur, and smoke, which also released enormous masses of gas. As a result, the Venusian atmosphere became more and more dense, together with the rising water vapors, as the vast masses of water from the oceans, lakes, and rivers evaporated, created by the enormous masses of molten planetary ice.
Following the book text can be left as it is, but necessarily some short additions have to be made to complete it, which you should also formulate yourself.
Through these rising water vapors, the radiation of the far sun was captured and held in a much stronger mass, without also a small part of it being able to return to world space. Jet water vapor, as Yusufwish Patar explained, is able to capture solar radiation more intensively than carbon dioxide. By capturing the sun's radiation, even if the sun was still so far away, about 100 million kilometers, through the gigantic masses of water vapor, a heat accumulation formed on the ground, which created a huge greenhouse effect, making the tormented planet even hotter and also evaporating the last remnants of the few remaining water masses. The surface was ripped open and traversed by raging volcanoes, even heating up to such an extent that the huge masses of water boiled before they evaporated. And the more water vapor entered the atmosphere, the denser the water vapor haze belt became, and the hotter the surface of the planet. The surface of the planet was torn apart more and more by volcanic activity, creating channels thousands of kilometers long, into which the outflowing oceans poured to boil and evaporate. Suddenly there was no more water on the planet, only raging volcanism and an atmosphere of water vapor, impregnated with sulfur vapors and other gases. The temperature rose rapidly from 170 degrees Celsius to 250 degrees, and then to around 300 degrees Celsius. There were no more oceans, no more lakes, no more rivers, and no more streams. The volcanoes began to rage even wilder than before, and bubbling masses of lava spread over the entire planet, soon burying everything beneath them. The volcanic carbon dioxide could no longer be bound by water because there was none left. So this gas, which is so effective for the greenhouse effect, also accumulated in the atmosphere, causing the temperature to shoot up again and stabilize at around 500 degrees Celsius. The high surface temperature of the planet Venus also had its consequences, of course, because it released all the carbon dioxide that had been trapped in the earth and in the former grounds of the seas, lakes and rivers, etc., created by the melting of the planetary ice sheet. In the past, when carbon dioxide was bound in the ground by new compounds and turned into carbonate rock and carbonate rocks, the enormous heat caused it to decompose back into its old components, and consequently also the carbon dioxide that settled in the heated atmosphere was transformed back into its former form, which led to the carbon dioxide belt that has surrounded Venus ever since and still surrounds it today. The same could happen on Earth through some circumstances, such as the madness of nuclear war, which could disturb and upset the entire structure of the Earth. However, even atomic bomb tests and volcanic eruptions can be enough for this, not only because they are able to shake the structure of the Earth just as much as other heavy explosions, but also because they pollute and darken the atmosphere with particles of dirt and inhibit sunlight, etc. Huge shifts in weight, such as those caused by reservoirs and urban development, etc., are also enough to cause the same thing, because tectonic shifts are caused by them, and consequently earthquakes, which in turn promote volcanism. But global warming can also contribute to this, as can the excessive production of carbon dioxide through the respiration of the immense human overpopulation and the millions of cattle and other animals bred and fattened for human consumption. The release of methane gas from soil and rock, etc., as a result of the dissolution of the permafrost and the emission of the organ gases, especially in cattle, also contributes to this. The once enormous belt of Venus's water vapor disappeared from the actual atmosphere and settled above the carbon dioxide layer at a further altitude, simply superimposing the denser carbon dioxide belt at the upper limit of the atmosphere. Exposed directly to solar radiation, it was able to break up the water vapor molecules and let the tiny individual particles escape into free space. When the planet Venus was still carrying water through the melting of the ice sheet, this water was able to bind the sulfur-containing gases in a solution. But when the water had completely evaporated, the poisonous volcanic gases were able to rise unhindered into the atmosphere to form their own and new, damaging and deadly cloud cover, in which life is just as impossible as on or in the planet itself. Today's Venus has an atmosphere in such a dense and poisonous form that it does not allow any breathing for any human, faunal or floral life forms, except for the lowest thermal life or heat-resistant bacterial life. On the planet, there is a thick cloud layer of sulfuric acid, which has been ejected by many thousands of small and large volcanoes and other gas and lava eruptions from fissures in the Earth, etc. The greenhouse effect on the planet, Venus, is so enormous that certain parts of its surface are constantly glowing reddish or black. It is perhaps interesting to know that it is the highly concentrated death brew of sulphurous and other deadly acids and gases, which are in a thick cloud atmosphere surrounding Venus, that has given the human being her name, grotesquely, if I may say so. The deadly cloud atmosphere brew, in fact, reflects the sunlight excellently, and therefore lets Venus shine in the sky in a very strong and bright light, as it is often seen from Earth like a miniature sun. This is why Earth humans gave Venus its name according to the life-giving radiant goddess of love. All these statements made in the 1970s are true, and thus correspond to the facts which, according to a statement by Ptah, were to be largely recognized and proven by earthly scientists at the beginning of the 1990s, which is what actually happened. That is how it was and is, because the Plejaren never spoke and never speak the untruth. This, in contrast, to the liars and deceivers, George Adamski and Karl Michalak, and all the other swindlers, cheats, charlatans, and liars who claim the same or similar things as Adamski and Michalak with regard to high life on Venus. No matter whether they lived yesterday, live today, or only tomorrow, and deceive and lie about it. I have seen Venus with my own eyes, and I can say with a clear conscience that all this is true as I have described it, which is why no other life in any higher form is possible on the planet except heat and acid-resistant life. The same is also true for all other planets of the Sol system, as well as for all their moons, as far as I know and have seen them myself, by the Plejaren bringing me to these solar satellites. But those satellites that I did not see myself, and of which I only know through the Plejaren, that they do not carry any human or spiritual or any other higher life than just bacterial life. I assume that the Plejaren are telling the truth about this, which is why nowhere in the SOL system there is really higher life than just on Earth. I know the Plejaren only as honest, open, and absolutely honest human beings for whom untruths of the smallest form are an abomination and completely incomprehensible.
With this, Edward, everything is now in order, and it should not be necessary to explicate anything further. What remains to be done now is to make any necessary corrections wherever there is talk of the destroyer. But you do not need my help for that.
Man, am I glad that everything is set right. Of course I can do the rest myself.
But if there are still questions, you may inform Florina.
Thanks, yes, I will do that if necessary. But do you still have some time? It is already after 2:20 HRS.
Of course.
Good. Then a question. Why did you and Florina call Quetzal? Did you yourselves make any observations that caused you both to do so?
The whole thing is not based on our observations, which we did indeed make. But Florina and I informed Quetzal because there was a lot of unrest among various group members, and also visitors and hikers expressed themselves negatively and left out what, of course, we could not have missed. And as this restlessness was not allowed to spread any further and should not lead to any outbursts, we asked Quetzal to settle the matter because he is well versed in the matter and is also careful that everything in the center is correct.
That's what I wanted to know. Thanks. Naturally, after retrieving and writing down the report of the meeting, we also talked about it, and I was told various things that I did not know until now. So I thought everything through and tried to analyze it from a purely psychological point of view, and came to the following conclusion regarding the origin of the whole thing. What do you think?
According to your explanations, I come to the same conclusions. But I would like to mention the following.
Then I am correct in saying that. With your father Svath and with you, I had good teachers. But now that everything has been clarified and everything is also settled, we can end this subject, and we do not have to talk about it anymore in the group when we can finish it next third weekend.
In fact, it still has to be discussed in the group, and then the topic has to be finished. We should also end our conversation for today. Your tiredness is visible, but on the other hand, my duties also call me. Farewell, dear friend, and if there are things that need to be discussed with me, inform Florina or Enjana.
Thanks, bye Ptah. It is so good to know you as a friend. Goodbye.
Thanks, goodbye to you too.